the President's Cabinet, and Administrative Council. The academic deans of our respective colleges and schools. The esteemed faculty of Tuskegee University. May the entire audience now stand. Ladies and gentlemen, the platform party. Ladies and gentlemen, the 9th president of Tuskegee University, Dr. Charlotte Patterson Morris. You may be seated. Our prelude, Allegro, Maestoso e Vivace, by Felix Mendelssohn, offered by Dr. Wayne Anthony Barr, our organist and director of choral activities. Let us now receive the invocation. We commemorate the life and work of one George Washington Carver, a scientist par excellence, a creative yet humble genius, a giant of inventive intellect, who invited us to share his world of exploration and discovery. We celebrate the outpouring of his countless contributions, his understanding of success as service to others. Grant, we pray, that the strength of his character, his high standard of achievement, his devotion to excellence, his example of selfless dedication for the benefit of others will live on in our lives and in the life of this university community. For the sake of the more excellent way, we pray, let the people of God say amen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for the 9th president of Tuskegee University, Dr. Charlotte Patterson Morris.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Good morning. On behalf of Chairwoman Norma Clayton and the members of the Tuskegee University Board of Trustees, I am delighted to welcome those of you who have assembled here this morning. We celebrate this morning a man who lived far ahead of his time. George Washington Carver was an American agricultural scientist and inventor who promoted alternative crops to cotton and methods to prevent soil deprivation. He was known as one of the most prominent Black scientists of the early 21st century. And what makes that so great is that he completed most of that research and work on this campus. As the Director of Agricultural Research in 1896, Carver devoted his time to research projects designed, as has already been said, to assist Southern agriculture, demonstrating ways in which farmers could improve their economic situation. He conducted experiments in soil management and crop production and directed an experimental farm for the areas of the Black Belt counties. During this time, agriculture in the Deep South was in steep decline because of crop cultivation of cotton had left the soil of many fields enhanced and worthless, exalted and worthless. Erosion had taken over to the point that the area could no longer sustain plant growth. As a remedy, Carver urged farmers to plant peanuts and soybean, as these plants could restore nitrogen to the soil while at the same time producing protein for the farmers themselves. Dr. Carver ultimately developed more than 300 products from peanuts and 118 products from sweet potato, including vinegar, ink, synthetic rubber, and postage stamp glue. He also worked with flowers and art and what we call design today, and many other things. You know the rest of the story. What is most important to note is that our researchers are still making a difference with farmers in the Black Belt areas today by developing food systems, organic products, and soilless products. The difference is we use technology today, and we are also moving toward bold action to address the climate crisis. Stay tuned for more details on this innovative strategy. So again, We welcome you to this 22nd George Washington Carver Convocation. Our hope is that you will learn at least one thing today that you didn't know before. Our program will proceed as printed, and we now will have the anthem for the morning.
Good morning. It's an honor to introduce Professor Larry Sass. He's a professor of architecture at MIT in Cambridge, where he earned his master's and his Ph.D., respectively. He spent many years in the profession teaching architecture and as a designer. And these days, he defines himself as a design researcher with over 100 peer-reviewed publications. And very similar to understanding the relationship between design and industry, bringing the content that's within the classroom into spaces in the commercial space, he mirrors a similar process that Dr. Carver mirrored with his work here at Tuskegee. He discovered a way of home fabrication using the computer and machines in order to create housing, in order to solve affordable housing and social challenges. His work has been exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. He prides himself in teaching as well as research, and he has worked on the establishment of new schools in places like Cambridge University and Singapore University of Technology and Design. Dr. Sass is a strong proponent of student success, and he's been a friend of the Department of Architecture as we've had students who have traveled to MIT on summer research and as graduate students. So it's an honor to have him home to greet us and bring blessings to us. Dr. Sass.
Wow. Good morning. We don't say good morning in Massachusetts. I think you probably know why. It's usually I don't get a chance to speak in front of an audience like this, and I'm just so honored and touched, and also more importantly, I feel very embraced and welcome. So I want to thank President Morris, Provost Hargrove, Dean Jackson, and Dr. Daniels, the head of the Robert R. Taylor School of Architecture and Construction Science, for the opportunity to talk to all of you. Without exception, this is definitely one of the greatest moments of my time as a professor. More importantly, because I can get a chance to share some of the things that I've learned with people that I really care about, and I can, more importantly, get a chance to learn a lot from all of you and our opportunities to work together. My department head, Nicholas DiMancio, had said about an opportunity for us to work with Tuskegee, that one of the things that's so important is that we will probably learn more from Tuskegee than Tuskegee will ever really get from MIT. And with that, I just want to say that one of the things that Dr. Daniels and I had been talking about for the past few years is a way to reconnect our two schools, to think about ways in which we could bring some of the spirit that Robert R. Taylor invented and discovered down here at Tuskegee back to MIT, and to share some of the things that we are doing at MIT in terms of technology and design and innovation with members and students and faculty here at Tuskegee. So just to state again, I'm a design professor. Most people probably, I think, don't really know what designers really do. I think a lot of times people think we put on a cape and start creating things magically, and it's probably less so. I think the one way I would really describe design is that it's problem setting, much less on problem solving. And what that really means is that you're creating, you're inventing, you're thinking of ideas. For example, with this particular building, Paul Rudolph, the architect, did not have a problem to solve with this chapel. He knew that there were some problems to solve. They had to house people. It had to withstand all the elements of the weather. But in terms of the way light comes into this building, the way in which brick and concrete go together, that's all innovation and that's all problem setting. So one of the things that I always like to talk about, or at least say about design, is that it's problem setting. And if you also think about some of the other great people who have come from Tuskegee, like Werner Tandy, who was an architect who did not complete his studies here at Tuskegee. He designed Madam C.J. Walker's home in upstate New York. And again, he didn't have a mandate for how it's supposed to be solved. A great designer thinks about how someone approaches a building, how someone enters, leaves, lives within the building, how it's set on the ground, where it's set on the ground, and how you experience the space. It's an invention. It is problem setting. Other more ways of thinking about problem setting that are much closer to home are things like the cell phone, or smartphone. Smartphones are an invention. It is not a problem it wasn't a problem to solve back in 2007 when it was invented. It was actually something that someone created. So just to think a little bit more carefully about the word problem setting, I just want to emphasize this. George Washington Carver was also a problem setter. Who ever thought of the things that he could have thought of when he was inventing some of the things that he invented, as well as, again, I'm going to reference back to MIT, the spreadsheet was invented in the 1980s, that no one really needed a spreadsheet at that time, but we all make great use of the spreadsheet. Other inventions where CAD was invented in 1963 at MIT by a student. Who would have ever thought we needed CAD? But actually, CAD's an interesting one. CAD is the software that most designers use. CAD was originally invented to run machinery, and that machinery is called the CNC machine, and that was invented at MIT in 1949. And CAD was invented to run that machine. Who would have ever thought today that CAD would be used to create movies? Actually, all of the computer models that are done in movies, they're all made in CAD. That was an invention of one student who, again, set problems and thought about design and innovation in a different way. So one thing I will definitely want to talk about is this connection between us, MIT, and Tuskegee. I really think there are two things that we could both get out of this connection and learn from this connection. Particularly that both of our schools are, unfortunately, have needs in many different directions. The number one thing that I think that I've noticed that happens here at Tuskegee that doesn't happen at MIT is community. Community is the foundation of how we live. I think probably most people here take community for granted. And I say that only because when I'm back north, I notice that community is absent. And I would say that we need community so much in schools like MIT. The second is resources. I think MIT does a great job of building resources. MIT, as most of you probably know, spends billions of dollars every year on science and engineering. And I think it's important for schools like MIT to share and explain how that happens. But I'm just going to start with Tuskegee. Tuskegee is excellent at engineering, science, and architecture. By many great leaps and bounds, it has amazing students that I've had the pleasure of working with at MIT during our summer science programs. Tuskegee is also excellent at maintaining and creating a connection between professors and students. I notice that students at MIT often refer back to their great professors. In contrast, Harvard, MIT, Yale, a lot of these schools, students don't actually meet a professor. A student will actually go through 4 years, and there are a lot of students that I would even say I've known who have never met a professor. They've only been taught by TAs, or they've met perhaps maybe a research scientist in a lab, but they've only seen professors from a distance, either on a monitor, or they've perhaps watched them give a lecture. But I know that a lot of MIT students do not have a connection to their faculty and never get a chance to hear someone say, you need to straighten up your tie, or maybe that may be an inappropriate pair of pants or something like that. Or maybe here's a good thing to eat, or here's a good place to eat lunch or something like that. I know that that happens here because all the times that I've been here and all the students that I've had a connection with have told me that they know their professors very well. Some of the students know their professors' children's names. At MIT, most professors, I don't even think the students even know that we have children. So I think that the connection that happens here at Tuskegee is just incredible, and MIT can learn a lot from that. In contrast, I would say community is our resources. MIT is excellent at disseminating and creating new knowledge and new research topics. So much so that it pretty much invents or creates a new building every year, or excuse me, every 2 or 3 years to support that need. You know, I would really preface that by saying that despite the fact that MIT invents new things, it really knows that it needs money to make this happen. And so, you know, in addition to all of the great work that it does bringing people in, one of the things that you should know is that MIT spends about $1 billion a year, just 1 year alone, in research, at least last year it did. And I know that it also brings in at least $1 billion in donations. Donations are not the same as sponsored research. I've actually witnessed and watched some of the ways in which MIT brings in money, and I would say it brings in about $1 million every 20 minutes, which is a tremendous amount of money. It uses that money to create fellowships for students. Most graduate students are fully funded, and fully funded means their tuition is paid and they have monthly stipends. Faculty are also paid over the summer for their research work. And faculty are also supported with money to travel and do a whole host of things with those funds. I do believe and wish and hope that other universities have the chance to do so. So just to give a couple of examples, just last year, we opened a new nano research building, a 7-story glass building that's just built exclusively for nanoscale research. That was done with a thanks by one donor, Lisa Su. All of this stuff is public, so I'm not really sharing stuff that's private. Lisa Su, who gave a healthy donation to fund new research. And more recently, in another year, next year hopefully, MIT expects to open another building, the Schwartzman College of Computing. And that's going to be a 7-story glass building with a healthy donation of $350 million by one donor, Stephen Schwartzman. And that's to fund research in AI and machine learning. And AI and machine learning are the two areas, new areas at MIT that I believe are going to pretty much take over most of what you hear that comes out of MIT over the next 5 to 10 years. It does a little bit with robotics, but not as much as other schools like Carnegie Mellon, but it does a very good job of creating new opportunities around AI. And then last, my School of Architecture. We're getting ready to move to a new building in another 2 years with a nice donation from one donor and a couple of other smaller donors, but one donor of $118 million. And that donor was not announced, but that donor helped us to get over the threshold of some of the funds that we needed to actually move. And within that college, within the new School of Architecture, we did get a donor, Gerald Chan, a named donor, who's giving $100 million towards a design program. That's not for construction, it's for funding students, it's for funding faculty, it's for funding programs. And that money will go to also do research, new research, novel research. And again, I really emphasize all of this and state all of this because I think what's important is to understand that with new research, as we move into this century, it almost doesn't matter what type of research we come up with if we don't have community. If we don't know how to bring together and work together as communities, we probably will not come up with useful knowledge. And that's the key. I always say to students, Ph.D. students, our mission is to create useful knowledge, not just new knowledge, but useful knowledge. As we noticed that these schools, especially schools like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, are trying to diversify, elevate the number of brown and black people in these schools, they don't recognize that we come from community and communities that need connection. I think they assume that research will happen the way it used to and that throwing money at the problem is probably one of the best ways to deal with the problem. But if we don't look more carefully at how community is formed, the values that go into community, we will never really be able to achieve or do things that are useful. We will come up with new gadgets. We'll come up with new objects, which MIT is great at doing, and new systems, which is what MIT is great at doing. But they will not be useful for the world at large. So I just want to take a second just to say, again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I just want to just preface one last thing, which is that the values chain. I think most people are unaware of how universities like MIT and Harvard value themselves. And I always say that there are three core values at a place like MIT. The first is an expectation that they will do good things. If you look at a lot of the campaigns and programs that happen at these schools, they usually support it around topics that are called a better world or climate change initiatives or things that are about doing good. And those are very important. So doing good work is probably the first value of these schools. The second is meritocracy, the assumption that people are working hard. And the last one is individual achievement. Now, students come to MIT, or students come to universities in general for community. Students do not look to become the top at something. Maybe there are a few students that do, but most students want a connection of some kind between themselves, faculty, and their friends. However, we all know that most universities are run by the faculty. If the faculty are the ones setting the values, how do you reconstruct the values so that they serve everyone, so that they serve the community as much as they serve the individual achievement of the faculty? Well, that's probably the next big hurdle and next big challenge for all of us. So I sort of put that out there to you as well. And I want to put that out there to the faculty of Tuskegee as well, to think about how can you instill and explain community to your students so that when they are at places like MIT, they can help us learn more about community. But in closing, I just want to also say the issue of fundraising. You know, I actually don't think that MIT and these big schools are the only places that can really do well around fundraising. Cornell College is another amazing college that has a really steep endowment of almost $3 billion. It's a very small school in Iowa that has managed to take on the commitment of fundraising. So, in just closing this out, I just want to leave with you the two things that I think that are great, that hold and great opportunities for all of us. Number one, I think there are so many great things that places like MIT can teach the world and help and support the world. MIT puts a lot of work into education, online education, and my hope is that that's made more accessible for all places around the world, and particularly classes around the new technologies that are coming out of MIT. I think it's very important to share those with the world. But even more so, I think what's more important is to have more conversation around what community means, what love means, what connections mean, and what it means to be able to build a real community of researchers and scientists who are going to create novel and useful things for a new planet and a new world. It's very clear the trajectory of where the world is going today. We know that the world is not going to be dominated by the traditional establishment of, in my case, white faculty. We know that the world will be more brown and have more people of color everywhere. So I think it's very important that we figure out ways of addressing and dealing with our communities as we move forward into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barr and the choir, for that rendition. Dr. Sass, we are so very pleased to have had you here this morning. Want to thank you for that inspiring presentation. But one thing we want you to do before this partnership is over, we want you to show us how to generate $1 million every 10 minutes. And then your work with us will be almost done. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for that, the information that you shared. And we are proud of the partnership that we are developing with MIT, with our School of Architecture and Construction Science. Do we have any board members present? I don't have any listed, but I don't want to miss them if we do. Any local or state government officials here this morning? None, thank you. I want to thank also our faculty, staff, and students who are here this morning. Thank you so much for your participation. A debt of gratitude to our Convocations and Special Events Committee for the work that you do in preparation for these activities. I know that it's a lot of work, and we do appreciate it very much. Now let us all stand for the singing of the Tuskegee song, and we will remain standing for the benediction.
Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace.
The Lord bless you and keep
Please first allow for the platform party to leave, followed by the cabinet and administrative party, and then, of course, the faculty.